When it comes to understanding why a quarterback struggles or why a quarterback is having problems over a period of time, a lot of people try to look at various angles. But in today's episode, I will be giving the full disclosure. The truth will be revealed about Jared Goff. Stay tuned, everybody.
We used to be a team no one respected. We used to be a team no one feared. That was then. This is now.
First victory of the year on the line. Goff's got it. Back, looks, throws, end zone. Yes! Caught!
You know who we are.
10-5, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions.
And you know where to find us. We won't be far. We'll be on your front porch waiting for you. We are the New Era Lions. And
we are driven by Detroit.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and we're diving in right now. But as always, before we dive in, I just want to again say thank you all to those that are coming back to the show. Thank you all for your view, your support, your patronage. It means the absolute world to me, and I'm so thankful to have loyal subscribers, loyal viewers, and I'm so thankful each and every time you come back. And to those people that are tuning into my show for the very first time, I just want to say thank you all for giving my show a shot. I hope you all enjoy the content, and more importantly, I hope to gain your subscription if I've earned and deserved it. And with that being said, to everybody that's out there, I just want to say God bless. I hope you have a great day. I hope you're going to have a really good day. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy the content, so let's get into it. So, here's the thing, folks. As I've said in the last couple of episodes that I've released, when it comes to currently right now, there is a lot of pent-up frustration, animosity, and there's a lot of people that, in essence, are looking for answers. Or if not answers, they're looking for someone to definitively blame. And what I'm talking about is the Detroit Lions community right now. Now, I have talked about this somewhat at length. When it comes to the current community right now, people are upset because of the fact that the Lions lost against the Bears, and they feel as if the world around them is kind of crumbling down when it comes to the Lions because they're seeing, or they think they're seeing, the same problems that have plagued the Lions in the past, and we're getting ready for another potential letdown because of the fact that we lost a game against what we would consider an unqualified opponent or a lesser quality opponent. And that's causing problems. However, though, it's not just causing problems with one specific part of the Detroit Lions. It's causing problems with multiple things. But again, as I said in a previous episode, and I'll put that episode back up at the top, when it comes to the majority of the negative fans right now, the majority of the SOL fans, they keep pointing their finger primarily at Jared Goff as the reason why the Lions are struggling, the reason why the Lions have been failing, the reason why the Lions have lost 2 of their last 4 games. So, I have talked about Jared Goff at a length for the majority of my podcasting career. And the reason why is because, again, to kind of go back and restart everything, when I came on the scene about 3 years ago, nobody really wanted to give Jared Goff much of the time of day. I was one of very few people who actually did that. And I defended it primarily based upon, hey, this is what I'm seeing on the field, this is what I'm hearing, and here are their statistics. Now, I will say this. Some people don't give a damn about statistics. They are all about, hey, this is what I see on game day, and that's all that matters. But I'm sorry to say it, for those that are just all about what you see on television on game day, you are probably the most misinformed fan that there possibly is. And I'm not trying to say that to be rude, but it's like, listen, watching television and watching a game one time or watching highlights on YouTube is not enough. You've got to dive into the deep film studies. You've got to take a look at all 22 film access. You've got to take a look at stats that you can only get if you pay for subscriptions, such as on FTN and PFF and all those other places. Otherwise, you're going to be massively misinformed here. And that is why I am doing this. I have spent the majority of my time when it comes to looking at the Detroit Lions going as deep as I possibly can without actually having the insider access. Practically any database that is available, I have access to, and that's because I always back up my claims. I always back up my assertions with facts and data. So, in today's episode, I'm going to be revealing the absolute truth about what is going on with Jared Goff and is he to blame or not. So, this is an expose episode. Whether or not it's a good expose or a bad expose, that's up to you. But let's take a look at it. First and foremost, we're going to start with the basics. When we take a look at the basic stats for Jared Goff, it's pretty much been the same kind of stuff that I've talked about before. High completion percentage rate, a good amount of yardage, good amount of touchdowns, low interceptions, decent to high passer rating, and a pretty good QBR rating. Again, you take a look at his rankings comparatively to the rest of the NFL, it's top 10 almost across the board. The only thing that's outside of the top 10 is the QBR rating. That's at 14th. Otherwise, Jared Goff is still playing at a top 10 level. Just like Ben Johnson said yesterday in his freaking press interview, he is still playing at a very high level. He is still playing, as Ben Johnson said, at an elite level. So, those are the basic stats, which I have talked about at length numbers of times. But again, most people don't give a thunder about the basic stats because to them, that's not going to really tell much of a story. So that's why we're going to go even deeper and deeper and deeper on top of that. So let's take a look at this next qualification. Everybody knows that I've said before that Jared Goff is like the play action king of the NFL. He is one of the best quarterbacks when it comes to play action. I actually went on to FTN and I actually took a look at this because their database is one of the most ridiculously deep databases you can find next to PFF. And I have that database as well. But when you take a look at FTN in terms of play action passing for Jared Goff, this is what you're going to see. A ridiculously high freaking completion percentage rate. Oh, freaking even more higher than his basic one. You take a look at his yards. He's almost got 1,000 yards, and this is on the season. You take a look at his touchdown interception ratio. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. His passer rating is through the damn roof as well. Every single one of those statistics that has some sort of a measure, save the completion percentage, is top 5. And the completion percentage is literally one spot out of top 5. So you're talking about a top 10 quarterback overall, and you're talking about a top 5 quarterback in terms of play action passing. Now again, I'm not telling anything that nobody doesn't already know. Jared Goff is really good off of play action. That is part of the premise of the Lions offense. Now we're going to start getting into the much more deeper dive stuff. Now we're going to start getting into the stuff that people want to know about. And one of the biggest gripes that I have heard from people about Jared Goff, he's a noodle arm quarterback. He doesn't like to throw the ball deep. He doesn't want to throw the ball deep. He can't throw the ball deep. He's not good at throwing the ball deep. I have heard this argument ever since the man came to Detroit. And I'm telling you this right now, when I was back on DLF, I talked about this, I disproved it then, but I didn't have access to this database that I now have. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I took a look at, again, the FTN database, and this is what I found in terms of deep passing by Jared Goff. This is going to blow your mind. Jared Goff has attempted 40 passes of deep throws. Now, this is something I need to quantify. What the hell is a deep throw? A deep throw, and I check this everywhere. Doesn't matter if it's ESPN, doesn't matter if it's NFL, doesn't matter if it's PFF, and it doesn't matter if it's FTN. A deep throw by all 4 categories, all 4 stat holders, is considered 20 yards or more. So that's meaning that the pass went through the air, had an air distance of 20 yards or more. So what FTN is saying is that Jared Goff has attempted 40 passes of 20 yards or more, 20 air yards or more. 19 of those passes have been completed this year. Now, I'm not a mathematician by any stretch of the imagination, but 19 out of 40, that's almost 50%. Here's what I can tell you right now. When it comes to stats, especially the further out you go from the line of scrimmage, the harder it is to complete said stats. And here's how I know this. Here's the total body of array of stats after explaining all that. Jared Goff is 47.5% completion rate on passes of 20 yards or more, according to FTN. He has 581 yards throwing on deep throws, and he has 5 touchdowns. Now, I know everybody's going to look at the fact that Jared Goff also has 4 interceptions, but I'm telling you this right now. When you take a look at that FTN database, a lot of quarterbacks have a much higher touchdown to interception ratio when you're throwing deeper out because, again, you're putting a ball out there much deeper, which means there's more of a chance that it's going to get intercepted. But here's the one thing I want to point out really quickly from those stats I just put up there. Jared Goff is number 7th in the entire NFL in completion percentage on deep ball throws. He's 14th in total yardage on deep ball throws. Now, here's what's really peculiar about that. Jared Goff is 31st in the percentage of all of his attempts that are regarded as a deep ball thrower. So to a certain degree, his critics do have a point that Jared Goff does not throw the ball, quote unquote, deep a lot. But I will say this, when he does, it does get a lot of damn good results. You're 7th highest in completion percentage. You're tied 6th in amount of touchdowns completed off of 20 or more deep balls. That right there tells me Jared Goff may not throw the ball deep often, but when he does, it has great effect. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. I checked this also out from the FTN database. There's only one other quarterback that has less than 10% of all attempts that are considered a deep ball pass, but at the same time has a completion percentage that is right where Jared Goff is at, and that's Kirk Cousins. I don't think anybody's going to say that Kirk Cousins is a quote-unquote bad quarterback. They're just going to say that he has problems winning in big games. But Jared Goff has already proven that he can do that because he has a better primetime record than Kirk Cousins. He has a better playoff record than Kirk Cousins. And unlike Kirk Cousins, he's been to a Super Bowl. But again, that's my whole point to give that little dissertation. Now, that is just that part. Now, I want to talk about passing efficiency here right now as well because I'm going to say this. One of the other areas that I've heard about Jared Goff is that, Jared Goff doesn't get the ball to the wide receivers. That, again, is not true. If you take a look at either FTN or PFF, because you can find this information either site, but I found it at PFF to be more accurate. Here's what I found. At PFF, Jared Goff has 26 drops by his wide receivers on the year. You want to take a wild guess where that ranks? That ranks number 1. Jared Goff has more drops by wide receivers than any other quarterback on the year. Now, you want to also know if those 26 drops were actually caught, what his adjusted completion percentage would be for said drops. It would be at 72%. That right there would be the highest completion percentage rate in the NFL if all of those passes were caught. But I'm just simply pointing it out there that at that point, again, people are not giving Jared Goff enough credit about the fact that when he gets the ball to the wide receiver, they're dropping it. When you've had almost 30 receiving targets dropped by your wide receivers, that's a problem. Because it tells me right there that the quarterback's getting the ball to the receivers just aren't catching the damn thing. So again, that is a very key piece of information to talk about right there. Now, the one other thing we're going to talk about here is how Jared Goff handles against pressure, because I know this for a fact. One of the biggest other gripes other than the deep ball throwing that people have against Jared Goff, especially the haters, is that he can't handle pressure very well. And I've told and said this time after time after time again. Almost virtually no quarterback handles pressure well. There are very few that are that good at handling pressure. And that's exactly what the stats in the database will show when we get to a comparative analysis here a little bit later. So this is going to be a bit of a longer video, but just understand, it's damn good. When we take a look at Jared Goff here, understand this. When it comes to the pressure rate, Jared Goff has been pressured 9th most in the NFL in terms of total pressures. He has 128 pressures on him. Now, let's go even further with that. Jared Goff's pressure rate, however, is at a 26.1%, which is actually towards the lower end of the total of the NFL. But here's what gets really interesting about all this. You want to know how much the total amount of percentage is Jared Goff's fault as far as his sacks that result from pressures? You can find this at PFF. 7.6% of the pressures that Jared Goff gets are a result of his fault. The remainder of that comes off of his offensive line, which is ranked 9th. So, actually, no, not 9th. It's towards the bottom. My bad. The point of the matter is this. The resulting factor is that Jared Goff is not responsible for the majority of his sacks. He is not the one majority responsible for the pressures that he's receiving. It's his offensive line. Because again, you go to PFF, how many sacks they attribute to actually Jared Goff out of the 25 sacks that he's had? Only 4. So 4 out of the 25 sacks that Jared Goff has had over the entirety of the year have been on him. They're saying 21 out of the 25 have been because of bad offensive line play. Not because Jared Goff is holding on to the ball too long. Not because Jared Goff is not just, understanding pressure. Because of bad offensive line play. Now, I want to also point this out here. People are also going to say, well, how does Jared Goff do under pressure in terms of completion percentage and all that nonsense? Well, I'll tell you this right now. It don't look pretty It's not very good at all in terms of comparative stats. If you just look at what a quarterback is normally supposed to do, it's only at 43.7%. But I'll tell you this right now. You want to know who he's better than in terms of other quarterbacks in terms of his completion percentage under pressure? He's better than Stafford, he's better than Josh Allen, and he's better than Jordan Love. Again, go to FTN. If you're willing to pay that database fee, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So, there's that. Oh, and by the way, also, from FTN, you want to know the percentage of time on all dropbacks that Jared Goff has good protection from his offensive line? It's one of the bottom ones. It's one of the bottom half in the league. He only gets good protection on about 3.7% of his dropbacks, which is ranked 21st in the league. So again, Jared Goff, the majority of his pressures, the majority of his sacks are from his offensive line not protecting him very well, and his offensive line is protecting him at a clip of less than 4% of the time with good protection. That right there tells me that the offensive line of Jared Goff has not been doing a very good job this year in keeping a clean pocket for him. Now, there's that. The last thing I'm going to talk about with Jared Goff before we get into the comparative analysis is this. DVOA and DYAR. I haven't talked about this at all up until this year. I wanted to wait till we were further in the season, which we are right now. Even after the last 4 weeks where people have said Jared Goff has looked bad, Jared Goff has done whatever. Take a look at this. This comes from, again, FTN. DYAR, Jared Goff is ranked 7th best in the league. His DVOA ranked 7th best in the league. Pretty much what that is meaning is that if you take a look at the actual statistical numbers of 19.5% DVOA and 970 DYAR, that means that Jared Goff is almost throwing 1,000 yards more than what he is supposed to be throwing, and Jared Goff is playing better than almost 20% of the time compared to other quarterbacks. So even though with 4 bad weeks, almost a whole month of bad play, he is still playing better than virtually pretty much 2/3 of the league. That's very interesting to me. That's very, very interesting to me. Now, the final thing I want to point out here about Jared Goff. Everyone wants to talk about the last 4 games that Goff has looked really, really bad. And I took a look at the stats. Yeah, it doesn't look really pretty. Jared Goff has only completed 63.3% of his passes, has only got 942 yards, 7 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, and an 85 passer rating pretty much. And he's 2-2 as a starter. But here's why I keep telling people that those that want to get rid of Goff over the last 4 games are really, really dumb. Because let's take a look at the comparison here. Take a look at what Jared Goff has done since the last 5 games of 2021 when they won their first game and up until the last 4 games. So that would be 31 games. Take a look at the last 31 games. Jared Goff has completed almost 67% of his passes, over 8,000 yards, 54 touchdowns to 14 interceptions for a 100.4 passer rating. And oh, by the way, out of those 31 games, he's won 19, which means he has a win total of .612. So if you're going to tell me, let's get rid of Jared Goff because of 4 bad games compared to the 31 other games prior to that where Jared Goff has looked absolutely superb, you'd be a fool. Just pointing that out there. That's just the Jared Goff total expose, if you will, about how well he has been playing in comparison to what people really think he is. But again, I always love doing this. This is part of the thing I love the best about my job as a podcaster, is I get to compare what other quarterbacks are currently doing in comparison to Goff. Now, I've spent a lot of time about Goff, but take a look at this. I decided to take a look at some of the best quarterbacks, in most people's opinion, around the NFL. These are all quarterbacks that are still playing because some of the top quarterbacks are out with injury, such as Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, whatever. So I decided to say, let's take a look at all the top quarterbacks that are still playing, that are not injured, which I put Tua Tagovailoa, I put Lamar Jackson, I put Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy, and Josh Allen. I decided to then take a look at every single one of their stats. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a rapid fire here. I'm probably going to give each quarterback stats and their stuff about 15, 20 seconds, so that way you guys can see exactly what I'm doing in terms of each statistical category. This is what I'm going to tell you right now for the basic stats. Let's take a look at Tua's. Pretty much when you take a look at Tua, a top 10, top 5 category, virtually every single one except QBR. Looks very, very good. The Dolphins seem to figure out a way to get him to be a productive quarterback now, and he seems to have overcome the injury bug. That's what Tua is doing right now. Let's move then off of him into Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, he's kind of a fringe top 10 candidate. Yes, he has a couple of top 10 categories, but he also has a couple that are outside of the top 10. One of them is actually outside of the top 15. But again, Lamar is not exactly doing terrible when it comes to being a passer this year. I'm talking about passer, not being a quarterback overall. So that's what we're seeing from Lamar this year. Take a look at Dak, who's next. When you take a look at Dak, Dak is probably having one of the best statistical years of his career. Every single statistical category that I could find on him for basic stats is top 5. Every single one of them. So Dak Prescott is having a really, really great year for the Cowboys. Then we move to freaking Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, on the other hand, is probably one of the worst ones out of the top 10 that I could find as far as, consensus agreement in terms of stats. Only 2 of his statistical categories are considered top 10 in comparison to the rest of the league, and that's yards and QBR. Everything else is outside of the top 10. So by statistical comparison, Jalen Hurts is not playing like a top 10 quarterback this year. Then, let's move off of Jalen Hurts and let's go to the defending Super Bowl champion quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, you take a look at him, he's playing at a top 10 level this year, even though he's having a down year by most people's comparison. Again, 8th in completion, tied for 8th in completion percentage, 8th in yards, 4th in QBR. But again, the thing that's really dragging down his numbers a little bit is that passer rating, and that's because of the fact of having all those interceptions. Then we move off of Patrick Mahomes. Now we go to Brock Purdy. The only probably the best quarterback statistically on this whole list is Brock Purdy. He is literally playing at a top 3, not top 5, top 3 level right now. Because literally all but one of his stats, as far as statistical ranking, is outside of number 1 or number 2, and that's the passing yards. That's ranked 3rd. So Brock Purdy playing at an immense level this year. And then finally, we get to Josh Allen. Josh Allen, again, playing at a top 10 level, even though he has the most interceptions out of any quarterback on this list. So again, that is what you see out of those 7 or so quarterbacks that I put together. And again, when you take a look at what Jared Goff is doing, Jared Goff is right in the mix with them. He is right there. So again, to say that Jared Goff is not a top 10 quarterback when you're taking a look at some of the other best ones that are in the NFL, again, foolish. Again, stupid. But again, I also know that some people are going to say, well, David, how does Jared Goff compare in all those other categories that you just talked about in comparison to those other quarterbacks? I'm glad you asked. Let's take a look at how Jared Goff compares to the others in terms of deep passing. Again, taking a look at their statistics for about the first 10, 15 seconds, maybe 20, and then we'll move on. Again, let's take a look at Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, in terms of his deep passing, one of the best in the NFL, if not the best this year. And again, take a look at the amount of attempts that he's throwing the ball deep in comparison to his total attempts. Not that high. It's only ranked 20th. Then, once you move off of Brock Purdy, we go to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is honestly kind of right in the middle for comparison to some of these other quarterbacks on this list. But he throws the ball a lot deeper more often than other quarterbacks on this list as well. He has the highest deep throw percentage of all the quarterbacks that I've mentioned so far on this list of the other 7. Then we move off of Lamar. Take a look at Dak. Dak is also having a really good year throwing the ball deep. But again, he's not spending a whole lot of time in comparison to other quarterbacks throwing the ball deep. He's right in the middle. Then you take a look off of Dak, you go to Josh Allen. Josh Allen is, again, he's thrown the ball deep more than anybody else this year in terms of overall attempts. But he's also thrown probably more attempts than anybody else this year. But again, Josh Allen is not really doing very well throwing the ball deep this year. He has a 3-7 interception touchdown ratio when it comes to throwing deep. That ain't good. Then you take a look at the next guy, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is almost even worse than that. He's the worst deep passer out of all the quarterbacks on this list. Think about that one. He's the worst deep passer on this whole list. 1 touchdown to 4 interceptions, and his completion percentage going deep this year is 25%. Now, I guarantee you this. Everybody's going to be like, well, David, that's not on Patrick Mahomes. That's on his wide receivers. Doesn't matter. I made that argument about Jared Goff back in 2021, and ain't nobody wanted to hear it then, so I ain't going to listen to it now. Sorry. Moving off of Patrick Mahomes, let's go to Tua Tagovailoa. And Tua Tagovailoa, he's right up there with freaking Brock Purdy. Gee, I wonder why. Because of the fact that he has the cheetah to throw to. When you have somebody like that, it's very easy to complete passes that are very deep. But again, he's not throwing the ball all that often deep either. Again, only 11.3%. Then you take a look at the last quarterback, which is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, again, kind of in the middle. Again, not too many throws deep, but at the same time, he's doing really good in the touchdown to interception ratio deep. That's my whole point. Because again, when you take a look at what I said about Jared Goff throwing the ball deep, he's right there in the mix with the rest of them. The only thing that stands as a huge outlier for him is the fact that he is the least throwing deep quarterback in terms of overall attempts counting percentage-wise compared to everybody else. But his actual production, it's right there. So, that's the deep passing. Now, finally, the last comparative analysis thing before I'm going to end this whole thing, and I'm trying to wrap this up as quickly as I can. Let's take a look at these quarterbacks that I've been talking about in comparison to Jared Goff in terms of how they handle pressure and how they do in terms of DVOA, DYAR, all that nonsense. Let's take a look at Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy does pretty well in terms of all the statistical categories. However, though, let's also take a look at this in terms of another statistical analyst. So, just like Jared Goff, he doesn't get a lot of good protection. Ranked only 3.4%, which is 24th. But again, if you take a look at him, his quarterback sacks, again, are kind of right in the middle. So again, he's accountable for some of his own pressures and some of his own sacks, just kind of like how the offensive line is. So again, it's kind of a little bit of a middle ground for him. When you move off of Brock Purdy and you go to Tua, on the other hand, Tua is accountable for a lot of his own sacks and a lot of his own pressures because, again, his is even higher than Brock Purdy. But again, he doesn't get pressured a whole lot because his pressure rate is the very, very least in the NFL. He gets pressured less than anybody else in the NFL. It's ranked 32. Then you take a look at his good pass protection. Again, it's also very low. So what does that tell me? That tells me that because Tua likes to move around in the pocket a lot, he's not really giving his offensive line enough of a chance to really give him good protection because, again, the more the quarterback moves around, the more the offensive line have to move around with him. And let's be fair and honest here, offensive linemen don't move that well. But anyway, moving off of Tua, let's take a look at Dak Prescott. When you take a look at Dak Prescott, again, it's kind of a little bit more of that middle ground that's with Brock Purdy, but it's a little bit better in certain areas. The one thing I will say about Dak Prescott is he has the highest completion percentage under pressure this year. It's number 1. So, Dak is very good under pressure, at least this year. Then, we take a look at Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, he is one of the worst when it comes to most of his sacks coming from him. Because, again, he's ranked 33rd. Now, wait a minute here, David. I know everyone's going to start asking this. There's only 32 starting quarterbacks. Well, let's also understand something this year. A lot of starting quarterbacks have been hurt, which meant a lot of backups have had to play. So, even though there have been backups that have been coming in, Lamar Jackson still plays worse in terms of giving his offensive line the ability to protect him because he's accounting to his own sack total, his own pressure total. That's Lamar Jackson. Then we move to Josh Allen. It's even worse. It's even worse. Again, you're going to start developing a pattern here when it comes to pressure, when it comes to the ability to handle pressure. You're seeing quarterbacks that are very mobile, that like to run around and dance around in the pocket. They provide more and more stress to that offensive line, which also affects their ability to handle pressure very well. The only one that is an anomaly to that is pretty much Dak, Tua, and Purdy. Now, when we get to freaking Jalen Hurts, again, he is literally right there at the very bottom in terms of the amount of pressures and sacks that he accounts for himself because his offensive line ranked number 1. His offensive line is the least responsible for all of the sacks and pressures that he gets for because of how much he dances back there in that damn pocket. That's Jalen Hurts. Then we move to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, again, not much better. Again, his offensive line does a really good job of protecting him as well. He just accounts for a lot of his own pressures and a lot of his own sacks. And then again, you take a look at everything else. His DVOA, his DYAR, again, all really good. Just like other quarterbacks like Tua, Purdy, Dak, and Allen. Then finally, to show the whole comparative analysis complete, take a look at Jared Goff's once again. He has one of the lowest amount of sack responsibility or pressure responsibility for himself, but also one of the highest in terms of his offensive line failing him. But like I said, DVOA, DYAR, they're top 10. Now again, Like I said, he's not exactly the greatest under pressure. Most quarterbacks aren't, like I've shown in this list. Literally only, let's see here, out of all the quarterbacks I showed, literally 4 out of the 8 quarterbacks have a passing completion percentage of 50% or more. So the fact that Jared Goff is right there at 47.3%, that's actually not that damn bad. I'm not saying it's great, but again, it's right there with all of the other supposed good quarterbacks of the NFL. So what's my point here with all this statistical stuff that I brought out here, all of this deep dive? It's this. For people that want to say that Jared Goff is the reason the Lions are failing, the statistical analysis that I just proved and pointed out there tells me that that's not even close to the case. Again, go back to what Ben Johnson said in the freaking interview yesterday. He said they have gotten away from some of their base fundamentals. They've gotten away from executing those base fundamentals at a very high level. And again, like I just said, the offensive line of Jared Goff has not really been giving him a whole lot of time. I know there's one particular fan of mine that has constantly gone back to the ESPN analytics as far as pass block win percentage. The Lions' offensive line in terms of pass block win percentage on ESPN analytics is ranked 13th. For an offensive line that was touted as a top 5, top 3 unit, our offensive line pass blocking for Jared Goff has not done a very good job this year. Now, is that necessarily because our offensive line is just not that good, or because it's also to do with injuries? I think it could be a little bit of both. But again, the whole point and parcel to this conversation, why this episode has taken so long, is that in order to get to the literal root of this conversation, you have to take a look at everything. Not just what Jared Goff has done, but how he's done in comparison to other quarterbacks. And the truth is in the pudding, the truth is in the stats, as I painstakingly took all the time to put together. Jared Goff stacks up just not only very well, but he's right there in the middle with all those other top quarterbacks that are playing right now. Doesn't matter if it's Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott. Does not matter who it is. He stacks up with them just fine. So to say that Jared Goff is the reason that the Lions are failing, that's stupid. Doesn't matter if it's the Woodward heavyweights that are saying it. Doesn't matter if it's the SOL fans that are saying it. Doesn't matter if it's 97.1 that's saying it. They're all idiots. I'm sorry to be so blunt about it, but it's like, listen, when you actually take the time to take a look at the stats, to take a look at the data, which is based off of the film studies that other people that have way more time than I do, that's what it tells me. Because again, I'm not making these figures up. These are figures that are coming from databases that people pay to get into because they're paying people to compile the data together and put it available for people to use. I'm not making the data up. I am just providing it to you. You do with it what you will. If you want to keep saying that Jared Goff is the reason that we're failing despite all of the empirical evidence that I've given you, then at that point, I can't help you. At that point, you just literally want to be ignorant because you don't want to hear the truth. But if you actually want to listen to the truth and apply it, that is where I can help you. I can actually give you all the data that I've got available to the best of my ability. And that's what I did with this very long, drawn-out episode. But again, having come to the end of that, I'm going to do a quick wrap-up here and say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you liked what you saw, please by all means like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you've not had a chance to do so, again, please subscribe. It helps me out. But I also want to encourage y'all, please, make sure after you subscribe, you make sure you turn on that bell notification icon as well, so that way you continue to help me out, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. I also encourage y'all, please share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more people we get in by sharing it, the better this channel grows, the better I do, and the better we all do. And with that having said, I just want to say again, thank you all for your time, thank you all for your view, your support, and patronage, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.